Under the blazing April sun at Arlington, a young tourist raised his camera, grinning like he just won the lottery. The black tomb guard stood motionless, his navy blue uniform gleaming, medals catching the light. The crowd held its breath, expecting a photo. But what came next wasn't a flash. It was a stream of water square in the black tomb guard's face. Gasps echoed, phones dropped, and the air turned electric with shock. To the tourist, it was a prank, a ticket to viral fame. But what he didn't know, what no one in that crowd could have guessed, was that the black tomb guard he just disrespected had walked through fire in Afghanistan, and the real consequences were only just beginning. Before we dive into this story, where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments. And if you believe that values like honor, courage, and sacrifice still matter, join us in keeping their legacy alive. The morning sun hung low over Arlington National Cemetery, casting long shadows across rows of white headstones that stretched endlessly into the distance. A gentle breeze carried the faint scent of freshly cut grass, but the air felt heavy with reverence. This was sacred ground, a place where America honored its fallen heroes. At the heart of it all stood the tomb of the unknown soldier, its marble gleaming under the April light. Tourists gathered quietly, their murmurs barely audible as they waited for the changing of the black tomb guard, a ceremony that embodied precision, honor, and sacrifice. Among the crowd was Javier Ruiz, a 24-year-old from Madrid, Spain, who went by Javi on his YouTube channel. With his slicked-back hair, flashy sunglasses, and a t-shirt emblazoned with a Spanish flag, Javi stood out like a neon sign in a sea of muted tones. He adjusted his backpack, grinning at his friend, Sophia, who was fiddling with her phone's camera settings. "This is it, Sophia," Javi said, his voice brimming with excitement. "Today's the day we go viral. 1 million views, easy. Maybe 2. Sophia, a 23-year-old with a quick smile and a knack for keeping Javi grounded, raised an eyebrow. "I don't know, Javi. This place feels heavy. Maybe we should just film some normal tourist stuff. You know, respect the vibe." She glanced at the solemn faces around them. Families clutching guidebooks. Veterans standing a little straighter. Javi waved her off, his grin unwavering. "Come on, Sophia. We didn't fly all the way to America to film boring stuff. These guys in the fancy uniforms, they're perfect. A little prank, a big reaction, and boom, we're trending. Trust me, I've got it all planned." He patted his backpack where a high-tech water gun disguised as a professional camera lay hidden. It had cost him $300 at a prop shop in New York, but Javi saw it as an investment in his future fame. 20 yards away, Sergeant Nathan Brooks stood at his post, his navy blue uniform pressed to perfection, white gloves immaculate, kepi hat casting a shadow over his face. At 28, Nathan was a seasoned soldier, 6 years in the Army with a tour in Afghanistan under his belt. Becoming a black tomb guard was the honor of his life, earned through months of grueling training. His eyes, hidden behind dark sunglasses, scanned the crowd with practiced calm. He'd seen tourists like Javi before, loud, oblivious, chasing a moment of attention. Nathan's job was to honor the unknowns, no matter what distractions came his way. Javi nudged Sophia, pointing at Nathan. "Look at this guy standing there like a robot. Bet he's bored out of his mind. Sophia, start rolling. Let's warm up the crowd." Sophia hesitated, then sighed and hit record, her phone capturing Javi as he launched into his performance. "Hey everyone," Javi called out loud enough to turn heads. "Welcome to Arlington, where we've got the world's most serious statues." He gestured at Nathan, mimicking a stiff salute. A few teenagers nearby snickered, but an older couple frowned, stepping back. Javi didn't notice. He strutted closer, exaggerating a military march, legs kicking high, arms swinging like a cartoon soldier. "Inspection time," he barked, winking at Sophia's camera. "Gotta make sure Mr. Fancy Pants here is up to code." Mr. Wilson, a 65-year-old Vietnam veteran with a weathered face and a Marine Corps pin on his jacket, stood near the edge of the crowd with his wife. he muttered under his breath. This kid's got no respect. His wife squeezed his arm, whispering, Just ignore him, George. But Mr. Wilson's eyes stayed locked on Javi, his jaw tight. Sophia lowered her phone slightly. Javi, maybe dial it back a bit. People are staring. Javi scoffed, brushing a hand through his hair. That's the point, Sophia. They're eating it up. Watch this. He sidled closer to Nathan, leaning in to inspect the medals pinned to his chest. Yo, dude, these are shiny. You polish these yourself, or do they come pre-buffed? A few nervous laughs rippled through the crowd, but the mood was shifting. Parents pulled their kids back, sensing trouble. Nathan remained motionless, his breathing steady, his gaze fixed forward. Behind his sunglasses, he tracked Javi's every move. 8 years in the Army had taught him to read situations like this. Tourists testing boundaries, unaware of the line they were crossing. Nathan's mind flicked briefly to his training at Fort Myer, the endless drills under a drill sergeant's roar. Your duty is to the unknowns. Your honor is their honor. He steeled himself, determined to uphold that duty. Javi, undeterred by Nathan's silence, circled him like a comedian working a stage. This whole get-up's just for show, right? He said loud enough for everyone to hear. I mean, come on, who signs up to play dress-up all day? Real soldiers are out there, doing real stuff. He air-quoted, real stuff, grinning at Sophia's camera. Sophia bit her lip, her unease growing. Javi, seriously, she whispered. These guys are actual soldiers. I read about it online. Javi rolled his eyes. Sophia, relax. They're tourist attractions like the guys in London with the big hats. Nobody's getting hurt. He turned back to Nathan, leaning closer. Hey, buddy, you ever smile, or is that against the rules? Bet they train you to look like you're auditioning for a wax museum. A few teenagers laughed, but the older crowd was stone-faced. Mr. Wilson shook his head, muttering, Disgraceful. Nearby, Park Ranger Emily Carter, a 35-year-old with a no-nonsense demeanor, watched from the sidelines, her radio crackling softly. She'd dealt with disruptive tourists before, but something about Javi's bravado set her on edge. She stepped forward, her voice calm but firm. Sir, I need to remind you that this is a place of honor. The Black Tomb Guards are active-duty soldiers, and we expect all visitors to show respect. Javi flashed a charming smile, raising his hands in mock surrender. Oh, absolutely, ma'am. Just having a little fun. It's April Fool's, right? No harm done. Emily's eyes narrowed, but she nodded and stepped back, her hand resting on her radio. Javi waited until she was out of earshot before muttering to Sophia, Total buzzkill. Let's keep going. Encouraged by his brush with authority, Javi upped the ante. He pulled out his phone, pretending to narrate a nature documentary. And here we have the elusive black tomb guard in its natural habitat, he said in a fake David Attenborough voice. Observe the rigid posture, the blank stare, a perfect specimen of ceremonial boredom. A few kids giggled, but the adults around them shot disapproving looks. Sophia's camera dipped slightly. Javi, this is getting weird, she said. Let's just grab some lunch. Not yet, Javi replied, his voice low and conspiratorial. We haven't hit the main event. He patted his backpack, winking. Trust me, this is going to be legendary. Sophia's stomach twisted, but she kept filming, torn between loyalty and dread. The crowd was thinning now, some tourists drifting away to avoid the spectacle. Mr. Wilson stayed, his arms crossed, watching Javi with a mix of anger and pity. Near him, a school group listened as their teacher explained the tomb's significance. These soldiers aren't just standing there for show, she said quietly. They've served in combat, earned their place through sacrifice. The kids nodded, glancing at Javi with growing disdain. Javi, oblivious to the shifting mood, grew bolder. He moved within arm's reach of Nathan, pretending to polish his buttons. Gotta keep these sparkly, right, soldier boy, he said, his voice dripping with mockery. Bet they don't teach you how to deal with tourists in boot camp. Nathan's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, the only sign he was human beneath the discipline. His training held firm, but his patience was wearing thin. Emily, now speaking into her radio, kept her eyes on Javi. She'd seen enough. If he crossed another line, she was ready to step in. But Javi was too caught up in his performance to notice. "All right, folks," he announced, raising his voice like a ringmaster. "Time for the grand finale, the April Fool's prank to end all pranks." He unzipped his backpack with a flourish, pulling out what looked like a high-end camera. Sophia's eyes widened as she recognized it for what it really was, a water gun, meticulously disguised. "Javi, what are you doing?" she hissed, lowering her phone. "This is too far." Javi ignored her, slipping back into showman mode. "Ladies and gentlemen," he called out, "I'm about to capture a very special moment with America's finest." He fiddled with the fake camera settings, playing to the crowd. A few tourists raised their phones, sensing something big, though Mr. Wilson's voice cut through. "Stop that nonsense right now," he barked, stepping forward. "This isn't a game." But Javi was committed. He raised the water gun, grinning for the ultimate April Fool's portrait. 3, 2, 1. With a sharp pull of the trigger, a powerful stream of water shot out, hitting Nathan square in the face. The liquid splashed across his sunglasses, dripped down his cheeks, and darkened his pristine uniform, pooling at his collar, where his medals gleamed. For a heartbeat, the world stopped. The crowd gasped, a collective intake of breath that seemed to drain the air from Arlington. Sophia froze, her phone slipping in her hands. Mr. Wilson's face went red with fury. Parents turned their kids away, shielding them from the scene. Emily sprinted forward, her radio blaring, but she was too late to stop it. Nathan stood motionless, water streaming down his face, his uniform soaked. Droplets clung to his medals, earned in Afghanistan, polished every morning with care. His training screamed at him to stay still, to honor the unknowns above all else. But something in his eyes shifted, a flicker of resolve. This wasn't just a prank. This was an insult to every soldier buried here. Javi's grin faltered as the silence stretched. He'd expected laughter, maybe a stern glare, but not this. This suffocating quiet. "It's just water, man," he said weakly, the fake camera trembling in his hands. "April Fools, right? No big deal." His voice cracked, betraying the first hint of fear. Nathan moved then, so swiftly it caught everyone off guard. In one fluid motion he stepped forward, his gloved hand closing around Javi's wrist with controlled strength. With his other hand, he plucked the water gun from Javi's grip, holding it like evidence. His voice, when it came, was low and commanding, cutting through the silence like a blade. "This isn't a joke. This is an insult to the men and women who gave everything for this country." Javi's face drained of color, his bravado crumbling. I didn't mean," he stammered, his Spanish accent thickening with panic. Nathan's grip wasn't painful, but it was unyielding, a silent warning that resistance was pointless. The crowd watched, phones lowered, their fascination turning to shame. Sophia stepped back, whispering, "Javi, what have you done?" Emily reached them, flanked by 2 other rangers. "Step back, Sergeant," she said, her voice professional but tense. "We'll take it from here." Nathan released Javi's wrist, stepping back with military precision, but his presence still loomed. Emily turned to Javi, her eyes hard. "You're coming with us. Interfering with a black tomb guard is a serious offense." Javi's knees wobbled as the reality hit. "It was just a prank," he protested, his voice rising. "I didn't know. I thought he was like a tourist thing." Emily didn't flinch. "Ignorance isn't an excuse. Let's go." She gestured for him to follow, the other rangers closing in. Mr. Wilson pushed through the crowd, his voice shaking with emotion. "You thought this was funny," he said, glaring at Javi. "That man standing guard for my brothers who never came home. You disrespected them all." Javi blinked, his eyes darting to Nathan's soaked uniform, the medals glinting in the sun. For the first time, he seemed to see them for what they were. Not props, but symbols of sacrifice. Nathan, still standing at attention, spoke again, his voice steady despite the water dripping from his kepi. This uniform represents every soldier who didn't make it back. These medals aren't decorations. They're proof of service, of lives lost. I served in Afghanistan. The men who stand here tomorrow have seen combat, too. You mock that for a video. His words weren't angry, but they carried a weight that silenced everyone. Javi's shoulders slumped, his confidence gone. "I didn't know," he whispered, his voice barely audible. I thought you were just—" He trailed off, unable to finish. Sophia stepped forward, her face pale. "I'm so sorry," she said to Nathan, then to Emily. "He didn't understand. We didn't understand." Emily nodded, but her expression didn't soften. "Understanding comes with responsibility." She turned to Javi. "You'll need to explain this to the authorities. Let's move." As they led him away, Javi looked back at Nathan, his voice breaking. "I'm sorry, man. I was an idiot. I didn't get it." Nathan gave the slightest nod, acknowledging the apology, then returned to his post, his posture flawless despite the wet uniform. The crowd stood frozen for a moment, then slowly dispersed, their chatter subdued. Mr. Wilson lingered, watching Nathan with quiet pride. He turned to his wife, his voice thick. "That's what honor looks like," he said. She nodded, squeezing his hand. Near them, the school group's teacher spoke to her students. "Remember this," she said. "Respect isn't just a word. It's how we honor those who gave everything." Sophia followed Emily and Javi to the security office, her camera off, her enthusiasm for the trip shattered. Inside, Emily explained the potential consequences. A fine, a ban from Arlington, maybe more if charges were pressed. Javi sat silently, his head in his hands, replaying Nathan's words. For the first time, he saw his prank for what it was. Not a path to fame, but a moment of shame. Back at the tomb, Nathan stood guard, the sun drying the water on his uniform. The medals on his chest caught the light, each one a story of courage. He thought of his squad in Afghanistan, of the friends he'd lost and the unknowns he now honored. Their memory gave him strength, a reminder of why he stood here, unmoved by disrespect. As the day went on, the crowd returned to its rhythm. But something had changed. Fewer tourists posed for silly photos. More stood at a respectful distance, watching Nathan with new appreciation. Parents explained to their kids what the tomb meant, why the black tomb guard never wavered. Mr. Wilson and his wife stayed until the next changing of the black tomb guard, saluting as Nathan marched off, his duty unbroken. Javi's apology lingered in the air, a small step toward understanding. He'd come to Arlington chasing fame, but he left with a lesson etched into his memory. Some places, some people, demand more than a laugh. They demand respect, earned through sacrifice and carried forward by those who stand watch. And at Arlington, where the cost of freedom is carved in stone, that respect is non-negotiable. If you enjoyed the story, consider sending a super chat to help bring more stories like this. Now click on the video on the screen to hear another story that's just as powerful and captivating, with courage, sacrifice, and a choice that will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about duty and justice. Click on the video on the